Thank you again today for joining us. This is webinar number 11 in a series of webinars for small business, navigating the impacts of COVID-19. I'm Barbara Coffey, Director of Economic Initiatives for the City of Tucson. We have another great program today focused on retail. We have guest speakers representing the International Council of Shopping Centers here to share some updates and resources with us so that you can be successful. As always, we will take your questions as we go, so feel free to enter those in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will get to as many of those as possible in our time together this afternoon. We'll ask all participants to stay muted since we do have a large number of attendees. And as always, we will record the session and make it available for everyone tomorrow. You can find links to all our previous webinars at connecttucson.com. And typically we post the Monday webinar by noon tomorrow, so you will find a link to it there. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce both of our key speakers from ICSC, that's our acronym for International Council of Shopping Centers, and then I'll turn it over to them to share with you. So first, Jasmine Johnson is a program director for the International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC, in Washington, D.C. She's also director of diversity and inclusion. In her work at ICSC, she leads the development of programs to engage underrepresented member segments of the retail real estate industry, implement solutions to improve their access to ICSC resources, and promote their contributions to the industry. Since joining ICSC in 2016, Jasmine has managed several key programs, including the P3 Retail Program, Partners in Diversity and Inclusion, and the newly formed Small Business Advisory Group, which you will hear more about today. Alongside Jasmine is Adam Thoker, Vice President of Volunteer Engagement with the International Council of Shopping Centers. Adam is responsible for providing structure and enhancements to the volunteer experience. Adam has more than 13 years of experience developing and leading member and volunteer experiences across a range of industries. In addition to his professional work, Adam has served as the President of the Board of Directors for a public-private partnership in Arlington County, Virginia, that was created to restore the vibrancy to Arlington's original shopping district. So welcome to both Jasmine and Adam. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here. And I know there's been a lot going on in our nation's capital, so thanks for taking the time out to visit Arizona today. And maybe you can start by sharing a little bit about ICSC, its purpose, mission. I'm sure you're gonna get us all up to speed, and then share a little bit about where things are headed in this country in terms of retail. And feel free to share programs and highlight resources that are available to our local retailers right here in Tucson. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Barbara. Adam, can you click me forward, please? So before I get started, I want to thank Barbara for inviting us and allowing us to spend some time with you all and to share more information about ICSC and how we can be helpful to your businesses. ICSC is a 70,000 member network. We have about 52,000 members in North America, and almost 1,400 of those members are here in Arizona. And we are the premier retail real estate association. We serve the industry in many different ways, definitely through advocacy. We host networking events, we provide educational opportunities for our members, but most importantly, we provide deal-making opportunities at those events. Our membership is comprised of developers and owners, brokers, public sector officials like Barbara. We have a large student population, and then we also have industry service providers. So that's anyone from an attorney to an accountant can be a member of ICSC and are members of ICSC. People typically join ICSC for the networking and for the deal making. And we do that in a number of different ways, but mostly it's through our events. We host about 200 events every year. And our biggest event, which was supposed to be in May, is Recon. And that event attracts over 40,000 industry leaders from all over the world to do deal making. It's a 3-day event. If you've never been before, there's nothing like it. So we'll hope you'll join us in 2021 But much like you, ICSC has had to adjust our offerings because of COVID-19. So Adam is going to give you a little bit more information about how we're serving our members, and we're still providing that opportunity to education, to networking, and that deal making opportunity. So Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I will share a little bit about how we've adjusted our execution to help our members network in a virtual environment. So like Jasmine said, of those 200 events, they've historically always been in-person events. They bring our members and the entire industry together to learn, network, and make the deals. Unfortunately, in the wake of the COVID-19 restrictions, it was necessary to adapt our industry engagement. The first step we took was making sure that everybody and every person who participates in all of our events, from our staff to our members to our sponsors, were safe. And we made the unfortunate decision to cancel all of our events through now the the late September. In doing that, we wanted to make sure that all of our members had the latest information. And so we essentially converted our entire homepage of ICSC.com to a resource center for COVID-19. We took the first steps of almost in real time updating that with state and national, and as much as we could, local recommendations, closings, and restrictions while that pandemic was developing. And once the initial list of closures and restrictions kind of toned down a little bit, we continued to build on that COVID-19 site. So we've had over 250,000 visits since it was established. And now, instead of just a resource for what's happening in COVID-19, it's a spot to help all of our members navigate the post-COVID environment, both personally and professionally. So the Resource Center now has sections dedicated to mid and large size businesses, as well as a small business section where you can find specific resources from the federal government and places you can go to kind of navigate the assistance that's available. In addition to the COVID-19 Resource Center, we've also focused on figuring out how to reconnect our members in this new virtual environment. And going from all in person to all virtual has been, for me, it's been a little weird. I really love getting out there and seeing people face to face, as I know you all probably do as well. And so we started with the education component, probably one that was a little bit easier to replicate. We had ongoing webinars, but we enhanced those into a weekly virtual series. And so the virtual series are weekly webinars that focus on doing business during the pandemic and how we emerge post-pandemic. So it's had everything from leadership discussions to tips on communicating with your servicer, and those webinars take place every Tuesday and Thursday. So tomorrow's session will address creative reuse of big boxes. If you haven't seen the announcement, I invite you all to register. If you're not able to attend live, the recordings are available free for our members as well. Finally, the face-to-face experience we can't replicate, but we're trying to do that virtually. We've invested in virtual communities of all kinds, and the first one of those is the ICSC virtual community. It is essentially a discussion group platform that we've designed to give our members an opportunity to communicate outside of your already established networks. We all know that you know your colleagues around town, but you may not know your colleagues on the other side of the border or in another city. And so this community gives you the opportunity to break down those barriers of location. Through this virtual community, our ICSC members can ask questions of your peers. You can find information necessary to help you reopen your businesses and do that safely. Our other social channels have been just as important for our ongoing virtual engagement. And so I'd encourage you, if you're on the Instagram, to check out the Talent Talks for Students, or if you have students in your community that are interested in real estate, to popping over to the ICSC LinkedIn group and seeing what's going on. We continue to develop content to reach all of our members wherever they are, virtually spending their time these days. Here's a list of the upcoming virtual series. So tomorrow's Big Boxes and New Uses. But while you're browsing the next couple of weeks of webinars, I want to introduce you to some of the policy work that we've been doing to help push the industry forward during this time of uncertainty. A little bit of background, you probably all know this, but the shopping center industry is critical to the economic, civic, and social viability of communities across our nation. The majority of almost $6.7 trillion in consumer activity generated by retail, food, beverage, entertainment, and consumer services occurs in America's shopping centers. So as we look ahead, ICSC has been tirelessly advocating for the retail real estate industry. Continuing the theme of reaching people where they are, where they spend their time. The following commercial is something that airs on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and CNBC. If you've seen it, it's pretty awesome. And we put this together, the first of its kind, with the intent of reaching our congressional representatives and those who influence them. And please take a look if this will play, fingers crossed.
From restaurants to retailers, hair salons to home improvement centers, pharmacies to fitness clubs. These businesses in your shopping centers across America are the backbone of our communities and the soul of our cities, which makes their business our business. And right now, our businesses need help. Ask Congress to create a COVID-19 recovery fund. Let's bring our businesses back to life and life back to our communities.
Uh-oh, we don't want it to play again, so we'll switch that. So that was the first, one of many steps that we've been taking and part of our, the Recovery Fund Coalition. So ICSC is the leader of nearly 120 business groups that represent 58 million workers that are pushing Congress to establish a recovery fund. The idea behind a recovery fund is that it would provide rapid liquidity in the form of federal grants to commercial sectors that have been impaired by the coronavirus. We want to help businesses retain and rehire employees, maintain worker benefits, and then continue the economic activity that we saw before the virus caused everything to stop. In addition to the Recovery Fund, there's a lot of other initiatives that our global public policy team is working on. We're working on business liability relief. I think that's probably a big concern for all of us out there as we start to reopen. We are really pushing to clarify rules and regulations to ensure the safety of all of your employees and customers, and then prevent unnecessary litigation. We really want Congress to acknowledge that, the patchwork of advice and industry practices and state responses during a national emergency creates difficulties to identifying a clear standard of care. In addition, another one is the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act. So something that's in progress, the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act will provide significant development in the conversation for accessible and an affordable program to limit exposure to pandemic-related revenue interruption, and it would provide businesses with the capital to pay essential operating expenses. We're likely to see additional proposals on that introduced sometime here in the future. Then there's bankruptcy relief, a lot of work on taxes. We have a lot of this information on our global public policy page, and if you don't receive the weekly e-news that comes out every Friday, make sure you get into contact with Jasmine or myself, and we'll make sure that you're on that list. On a more local level, we've been advocating a couple of additional things that are probably of interest to many of you. We're really looking for temporary forbearances on all commercial loan obligations that underlie the shopping center industry of at least 90 days. That goes for property taxes as well. We're advocating for temporary relief in the collection of property taxes and a waiver of penalties for any delinquent payments. And then we're encouraging localities, states to support economic recovery by introducing a sales tax holiday once people are allowed back out of their homes to encourage those shopping at brick and mortar retailers. And now, I think I will turn this back over to Jasmine, who will talk a little bit about the small business program that we're putting together.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Adam. So why small business tenants? Why are we here having this conversation with you all? To be honest, ICSC has not always been intentional about engaging small businesses, but we have always identified industry trends, and adjusted our offerings accordingly. And much of what we're seeing now is an emergence of small local businesses in our shopping centers. So those are the mom and pop restaurants and gyms and service providers and even franchises. You know, that's what our shopping center developers and owners are looking for, to provide unique experiences for their consumers. So we've been really intentional about how we are engaging small businesses and making sure we're providing a place for them within our network. When I started with ICSC over 5 years ago, and Barbara can attest to this, I would go to the conferences and you would really only see the big box stores represented, the more national brands, but that has evolved over the years. And not only are these emerging brands and digitally native brands coming to the shows, but they're also exhibiting and they're speaking on our panels, which is providing a perspective that I think was missing from conversations that we were having years prior. And I think, so, you know, in addition to what we're seeing at the conferences, we wanted to make sure that as we respond to small business needs, that we're hearing directly from our members. And that's where the Small Business Advisory Group comes into play. And Barbara mentioned it earlier, it is a new group. It is something that formed in the wake of COVID-19. We wanted to make sure as we create these new resources that they're relevant and useful to you all as you're working through this pandemic. And the group, it consists of small business owners, of course, and then we have representatives from some of our larger landlords also on that group. And the purpose of that group is to really guide us and to make sure, again, that we're creating relevant, useful tools that can be implemented, you know, right away to help you with marketing, whether it's reopening, omni-channeling. We just want to make sure we have the resources in place for you, and ICSC can be that one-stop shop for small businesses as they navigate these challenges. Well, actually, before I move forward, I want to say that we are still recruiting small businesses to serve on that advisory group. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you have at least 2 locations and less than 75 employees, please feel free to send me an email, and we can definitely talk about it, see if it's a good fit for you. But we do not have West Coast representation, so I'd love to have a small business from Arizona on that group. And I'll be providing my email address at the end of the presentation. So definitely reach out if this is something that you're interested in. Adam,
I'll pause for a minute. That's great. I think probably a question in everyone's mind is, as you and Adam both talked about membership, what's the opportunity right now? I understand that ICSC is making some membership availability for the next couple of months at no cost. Is that correct? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I can give you a little bit of background around our membership structure first. So typically our member companies will pay $800 to join ICSC, and any of their employees will join, they have access to ICSC for $125. We have waived that fee for small businesses for the next couple of months, and I will share a link in the chat with you right now. And you'll be able to join ICSC through the end of July. You'll have full access to our membership directory. You'll have access to all of the resources, all of the webinars, our research, everything will become available to you. You'll have membership just as our full paying members have, because we think it's important for you to learn more about ICSC and see if it is a resource that you want to continue to engage in. So I sent the link. Did it?
Yes, that's great. Okay. It's there. Okay. And I highly recommend everyone take advantage of that who has, if you have not participated or engaged with ICSC before, because as Adam showed you a few slides ago, there are some great programs that you could take advantage of right now. I know it looks like someone, Patrick in the chat room, already checked into the big box seminar. If you get that notice that registration is closed, does that mean that it's at full capacity? What does that mean, Adam?
Yeah, so if the registration is closed, all of our webinars have been selling out since the beginning of the pandemic. Unfortunately, we have a limit of 1,500 people per every webinar, and once that gets full, we don't like to accept anymore. You can try and watch it live if you contact our membership team if there's space. Alternatively, we do make those available within less than 24 hours for the recordings.
Oh, let's see. Actually, I'm going to fix this link. Okay. Let me resend the link on the membership because I think that it went, oh,
Okay.
it went back to members, attendees. Hold on. Let me try one more time. Okay. Let's try that. To attendees. Now you should have it.
Okay.
So everyone should have that link. And then, so to your point, Adam, if someone were to miss and not be able to register, check out the recorded version. And then are those posted on the website somewhere? How would you access those?
Yeah, in our COVID-19 Resource Center, there is a link for all of the webinars that we've hosted in the virtual series. You can pop in. If you're logged in, you can just click the link and it will open in your internet browser. So you don't necessarily need to download any software. It'll start to play and you can listen. If you ever can't get in and you really, really need to watch it live or want to participate, send me an email and I'll see what I can do for you.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Keep going.
So I just wanted to share an example of one of the resources that ICSC is creating. This did not come from our small business group our small advisory group, but it is a great example of ICSC members reaching out to ICSC and saying, hey, we're reopening, we can use some help with marketing. Can we work together on a campaign? And specifically for our members who may not have unlimited resources, they may not have a marketing team or someone that can help with this or financial resources to create their own marketing campaign. We've created this awesome toolkit. And the purpose of the toolkit was really to help our members welcome their customers back as we move towards reopening, and to reassure them that their safety and health is a priority, and then also to celebrate the unique experience that retail provides. And as you can see, they have some cute, quirky little sayings. We're open to social distancing as long as it brings us closer together. And then this one over here, we're open to eating together again, even if we're farther apart. And then, what's really exciting about this is we've created so many different assets. So we have assets to fit several different industries. So if you happen to be a gym, instead of an ice cream cone, because that wouldn't fit your, we have someone working out. And you can see it's really easy to just add your logo. And it comes in different formats. So it can be a postcard, a poster that you hang in your storefront. And you can start, sending out to your community. And we have a hashtag, because I almost feel like nowadays, if you don't have a hashtag, it didn't happen. So there is a hashtag associated with this campaign. But again, this is just really the beginning of what we're starting to do for our small businesses. We are really working side by side with our members, especially through that small business advisory group, to identify other opportunities that we can come together and help our members through this challenging time. And not just, with COVID-19, but we realize that small businesses are the backbone of not only, our country, but of our industry. And we need to make sure that you all are part of the conversation to continue to participate on our panels and to offer your insight. And we're going to continue to build out our resources to make sure to make sure we're helping you, but also that they're accessible to you. So we want to have more of these conversations and working directly with Barbara and some of our other public sector officials to make sure that we're hearing the needs of our small businesses in a timely manner so we can respond appropriately. And I think that's it for this campaign. I just want to reiterate this toolkit. As soon as you take advantage of that complimentary membership, this toolkit will be made available to you. So you can click through, see if it's of interest interest to you, and our head of communications would be more than happy to talk to you about it and help you set things up and make sure you're all set to use it for your business.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic benefit to have some ready-made collateral and be able to sort of start that, while businesses are so focused on just navigating how to reopen, right? And all the new protocol and things that they're thinking about. Marketing is one more piece of the puzzle, and it's often sometimes the last thing that we think about, right? Because, we're just trying to drive business back through the door. So I think that's a great asset and a benefit. I guess as you talk about changes in the retail industry across our country, and especially, things were already changing before COVID-19. Things have been, morphing pretty rapidly with even big box retailers and other changes with e-commerce in the last 5 to 10 years. But now with the pandemic, what are you seeing, and what do our small businesses need to be thinking about, and and you mentioned many of our major landlords, many of our major shopping center owners and developers are now more than ever reliant on small, independently owned, local mom and pop retail. So what are you seeing, and what would you say to them?
So Adam's going to get into some data, which I think will be helpful to the question. So I'm going to pass it over to Adam.
Great.
Excellent. You hit the trend line pretty perfectly there. And so I was going to start with a little bit of consumer research, but I think to your question, what we're seeing a lot of is an acceleration of what was already ongoing. Before this, we were seeing an increase in the buy online, pick up in store, and now you're seeing consumers are more than 50% willing or more likely to shop at an a retailer that offers pickup without having to go into the store. So if you're omnichannel and you're only offering in-store pickup, think about trying to utilize some of your parking area, or figuring out how to make the consumer happy without having to leave their car. You're seeing an enhanced likelihood of consumers to order online for food delivery when they may not have done that in the past. And so you're seeing this transition happen at a much faster pace than we probably would have seen pre-COVID. But I was asked when talking about the research that we were doing to share some kind of uplifting news. And so I wanted to share some of the good things that we've seen from the consumer research we've been doing over the past couple of months. And just to note, once you've become a member, you'll have access to not just the top level of this research, but the amount of data that we have on the industry is pretty incredible. And our research team won't let you try and make sense of it on your own. If you have questions, we're happy to help interpret what we've seen or what's going on, and provide you as much background as necessary to help you feel comfortable with any of that data. I know we're not all into the data, especially me, but I can read some top level and I like it. So what we're seeing from some of our latest consumer research is they're really looking forward to returning to many of the popular places that they enjoyed before the pandemic. The largest share of adults, more than 70% of adults that were surveyed, say they'll feel comfortable visiting non-essential brick and mortar establishments, primarily in the open air shopping centers and restaurants within 2 months or less of the reopening, after the immediate crisis has started to go down. We've also seen about 3/5 of our consumers, they'll feel comfortable returning to malls and personal services within 2 months or sooner. Probably a lot of that has to do with the haircuts. I know I can almost not wait any longer to go back and have somebody chop this thing off, but we'll keep waiting. Most of our retailers are also.
There's not a hockey season on right now either.
That's right. We're also, we're seeing a lot of our retailers, a lot of our members are putting extra steps into creating that safe environment for our returning customers, and that's going a long way to the consumer comfort in returning. So more signage, additional cleaning spaces, more hand sanitizer stations, and additional staff training on hygiene and how to enforce social distancing measures. Really top the list of things that our retailers are doing to make customers comfortable. We also took a look at what in-person visits will look like per per venue, right? And overwhelmingly, the consumers say their in-person visits are probably going to remain the same or increase after the COVID-19 pandemic subsides, with a couple of small exceptions. You're probably going to see a little bit longer turnaround for movie theaters, gyms and fitness facilities, and then other types of like your leisure and entertainment venues. It's unfortunate for the gyms because I really can't wait to do that. So I'm in the 12% that's more likely to go back out. But I totally understand all of those. And I think that, as this progresses, we've seen a huge uptick and change in the consumer sentiment. And I believe that will probably continue. As we see in the next slide, when we did this at the beginning, 66% of adults, or 34% responded affirmatively that businesses should reopen. And 1 week ago, we closed another survey and we had 63% of the adults who said, yes, let's reopen businesses. And that's a great trend. I mean, we're on the way up. It's likely continuing, and you'll see, like I said a little bit earlier, a continuing trend of delivery and takeout growth in dining, and the consumers likely shopping at the omni-channel retailers for the pickup at the curbside or in the parking lot. So with that, if anybody has any questions on research, I can point you to the research website. There's a lot more information there. We do regular consumer surveys, and we have a ton of industry data to share as well.
So it's interesting, just on this slide that you have up right now, the bottom stat, millennials are staying put. 57% say they will not move due to the pandemic. What's that about? Tell me.
I can't, I wish I could tell you a little bit more on that one. I don't know why. I wish I knew why the 57% said. I can guess, like much of the podcasts I've listened to lately have said millennials are more risk averse, and there's probably many reasons for it. But, I think what that goes to show is if you've been counting on kind of a change in the demographic of your area, you may want to, readjust your expectations.
It's interesting. I think it would be interesting to dive deeper into that. Is it because they, I don't know, were they moving a lot before? Was there a lot of that migratory behavior or not? So interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, technically they say I'm a millennial, and so I think the last number of years have been, an economically strong. Like, millennials have found themselves in a strong position financially, probably, and so they were more willing to take a financial risk of moving away from what was comfortable.
No, I think you might be onto something there, because, right, this is a hardship that they've seen. They, probably haven't seen the likes of before, right? So while they were much more maybe carefree and able to move around, maybe they are sort of pulling in a little bit and staying put to see. I'd be interested. It's interesting. So there's some good follow-up.
I think you're right too. It's probably an interesting stat that will also change, like the rest of these, probably pretty quickly as the economy starts to rebound and hiring restarts at a lot of those jobs where maybe the millennials have been laid off or furloughed. That might change that number, back down to whatever it was before.
Right. Certainly a category of people that's hard hit. So that's interesting. So there's a question here about what is your definition of when COVID-19 subsides? Is that now, or the question, is it when the government says you can open your business? What are you all seeing, I guess, where you are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for what subsides means is different in every region of the country we're seeing, right? So as businesses begin to reopen, I would say the subsiding factor is when people are allowed to go back to stores. If we're in stage, like in Washington, D.C., we're just entering stage 1, where I live. I don't actually live in Virginia, so I don't want to confuse DC and Virginia. I get in trouble for that a lot. But we just entered stage 1 in Virginia, and I don't know that I'd call that subsiding just yet, because it's just beginning to open non-essential. So when we're thinking of coronavirus subsiding, I think that's once everything is allowed to reopen, but you'll likely still see some restrictions. And so we're not talking once all restrictions are lifted, if that makes sense.
So there is a question about your survey data. Do you have a sample size? How many were surveyed? And was it open to everyone in the U.S. or just members of ICSC? How was the survey conducted? Do you have some insight?
That is a very good question. One that I don't have the answers to, but I can certainly put whoever is interested in touch with our survey manager. And they'll be able to share with you sample size and selection and questionnaire design and any of the nitty-gritty pieces of the survey that you're interested in.
That's great. And there was a comment by Margie, I think, on the millennial topic, where, you know, the other thing that's difficult right now for everyone is moving, right? Would require, you know, a new place and then having to make new friends. And that would be a lot more difficult now, given our social distancing circumstances. And I've even watched people move into the area just in the last few weeks that part of me had, a little sadness, because I thought they're not really going to experience Tucson or any of our communities across the country, right, the way that they were, 3 months ago. And so you wish so much that they can enjoy that vitality that comes with the community that they're locating in, and have access to that again very soon. But I think in due time, right, in due time. So again, there's more questions about whether the stats are national, but I think they are national as opposed to local. Yeah.
Yeah, all of our surveys are done at a national level. So they're not local based on, any city or county, unless they've specified, but it's a national survey of adults generally, unless otherwise specified in the title.
Fantastic. So I thought of a few other questions. And I'm going to look at this one. How important is, a digital or online presence or access to an e-commerce platform for our small retailers? Can you, share any thoughts on that based on trends or discussions that you've witnessed?
Yeah, before this, we were seeing consumers migrating toward the omnichannel. And if anybody on the line has had an opportunity to read the Halo 1 and Halo 2 studies that were done that talked about how retailers' sales increased once they added an online presence, or if you're an online direct-to-consumer retailer, how your sales increased by, I forget the appropriate percent, so I don't want to quote the number, but it was a pretty hefty margin, and we have the dollar amounts equated on our website with the Halo reports. If you're direct to consumer and you added a brick and mortar shop, your sales continued to increase at a much higher rate. And so they complement each other. And with the coronavirus, you're seeing consumers want that, even more. And so they're looking for an omnichannel retailer, somebody who has that brick and mortar shop, but also an online presence. And so if you look at some of that research that ICSC has done, if you are not online, you're really missing a huge portion of your customers that you could be tackling.
Yeah, and we're thinking about that too, about ways to bring more resources to our small businesses. And so we're definitely, those that don't have that online presence, that's something that we've been focused on. So we have a few marketing opportunities up our sleeves for our businesses. What are some other ways, though, during this pandemic and sort of post-pandemic, as we are reopening, what are some ways retailers can set themselves apart? Do you have some success stories that you can share with some retailers that you're familiar with?
So I'll say that one thing that has come up quite often is retailers that are really invested in the community have done well with returning customers, especially now that, with everything going on in the climate of our country, people want to see retailers that are committed to their communities. But as far as best practices, I think we're all still figuring this out, and everyone's trying to figure out how to get it done and how to get people back engaged. I do see partnering, the smaller retailers that have partnered with their local officials and even engaging with their landlords on a regular basis and keeping that line of communication open have created some really unique programs to support them as they reopen. So that's a recommendation that, we'd highly provide. And we do have webinars that speak to those different things, like engaging your landlord, and we're actually working on a reopening for small businesses webinar that will be in July, mid-July. So we'll talk more about that, and we should have more best practices by then. Adam, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think to echo that, the communication is really the key. When I look just in my local community or at ICSC members who are telling me, how well things have been handled, communication with your customers, with your landlords, with your tenants, with your vendors, with your employees is key. If you're doing that really well, it keeps everybody a lot more comfortable that you as a business are on top of it, right? And so you're putting your customers at ease at a time of really increased anxiety in the population as a whole. And so that's one of them. To echo what Jasmine said, that the community involvement also goes a long way to show that you as a business are there. You're there for the community, not just to sell them lunch or shoes or whatever it is, but you're investing in them, in their community as people and citizens and neighbors. And just the feel-good stories we don't see enough of, and there are so many of them out there to highlight from retailers doing good that I wish we had a reel to play on that.
Yeah, there are stories, and so a couple of things you said. The communication is key, so that helps restore confidence, and again, it creates that invitation again for those customers to return to the business. But then also the do good that happens everywhere. We've had some amazing stories of restaurants serving our essential workers and bringing food to them, and all the sanitizer that's being made in many of our breweries or distilleries or other places that can make, they can pivot and do these things. So Alan brings to our attention, he talks about the importance of outside air. So I just want to, he's talking about that safe dining is outside, for example, 100% outside air. And as you mentioned, Adam, in your slides about the return to outdoor malls or lifestyle centers where you can find more of that open air dining. And again, that's important. So, are there other facility or sort of trends that you're seeing in terms of the environment for retailers that you think will become more popular going forward?
Yeah, that one is a tough one. I think we're still in such early stages of many people reopening and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. From the dining perspective, the reopening is happening across the country at one of those good times for outdoor dining. And so it's making it easy to transition a parking lot or a sidewalk or a large open space to serving food, right? That if it's winter, that's not going to happen quite as easily. So it's going to be a lot more difficult. And so just navigating what the inside looks like to make sure that your customers feel comfortable interacting. I think there was, I think, an SCT article in one of the ICSC news recently that talked about the amount of space in a number of enclosed malls. They've got roofs, but there's a ton of open air, right? Just because they're not open to the outside. And if they're working efficiently and they're not overcrowded, you can dine perfectly safe in a number of those properties. And so I think we're going to see what happens. It's a little early to say here's what we can do, but I have to say, watching from the outside a little bit, it's really amazing to see the ingenuity of our members and our retailers and our landlords, and seeing them all work together to survive and then thrive in this new normal is quite impressive.
So the question from Tom here, are you finding retailers having problems getting their employees back now? And what constraints are you hearing about? So I think we've heard this in a couple different contexts. One in particular that, you know, if they were, let's just say, retail workers or restaurant, food and beverage workers, and with a lot of the forced closures or reduced hours, you know, there really was no work for those folks. Maybe they began on a path for unemployment. I heard stories about maybe they're making more on unemployment than they were at their, you know, retail job. What are you seeing? Are you hearing anything about that?
Not specifically. We can talk to our research team and see if they're doing any research into the effects of returning from a layoff or a furlough. But anecdotally, what we've heard is it goes back to making your customers and your employees feel safe. And what I've read in the Wall Street Journal or New York Times and some of the articles about employees returning to retailers or returning to restaurant service capacity, if the employer is doing everything in their power to communicate clearly and create that safe environment for their employees and their customers, then they're having a much easier time.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard that as well. As a matter of fact, I remember when businesses were starting to close, I had calls from employees in some of our stores in the community that were concerned. They were thinking it's time to go home. It's time to stop being so close. And so there were concerns again at closing and now again at reopening. And so I think it's the hard work on the part of the small business owner to restore the confidence of the employee as well as the consumer. So I'm trying to, so I know that Claude is also sharing a lot about the ventilation code compliance. So I appreciate that, and I think he's put that in the chat room as well. So thank you for that. Here's a question from Teresa. Are you seeing particular training needs for employees that employers are requesting that for their employees that involve maybe local higher education credentials or certifications could help with? So I guess as businesses pivot and maybe there's certain skills that they're going to be looking for, maybe they need that help on the digital marketing, you know, and efforts that they're going to have to pursue, or maybe they have some other needs that they didn't have before the pandemic. What kind of training is being promoted, and has that been a concern of many of the retail industry?
So that's a great question, and I don't know that I have.
Yeah, I would say not specifically from our members. We haven't received those types of questions or requests for training. We have, through our webinar series, offered different skill training type of webinars versus, you know, industry topics. So we are trying to meet those different needs, but we haven't had any requests directly about those type of trainings.
So it's, that I know the question comes from a great workforce provider. So I think our Pima Community College partners would absolutely be able to help people pivot or get some new skills as they go back to work. And as I always say, make yourself more marketable during this downtime if you have the extra time, right? Get that extra certificate and increase your skill set. So I wanted to share, but again, invite everyone to add any additional questions that they may have of our ICSC panelists, and also to be sure to check the chat room for that membership opportunity, because there are some amazing resources and webinars and research, as you heard mentioned here today, that you could access and utilize. And something else that I want to call your attention to while we have a minute is just that, another resource that we're making available to you with the Hound platform, which is a way for you to drive foot traffic and sales back to your business as you reopen. So we are now signing up businesses at no cost for a limited time on our Hound platform. We've partnered with Pima County, and so the city of Tucson and Pima County are bringing you this opportunity, and I want you to be sure that you see that. We've been putting it in our email newsletters, and I'll put something here on the chat box before we leave today. But the program's available to all businesses located in Tucson and Pima County for a period of time at no cost, so that we can really drive those customers back to your business. And it has a very cool app component where consumers can download even the My Hound app from their favorite app store and start seeing the deals that will pop up right around your geographical location, right? And so it will tell you, you could buy a gift voucher, which is like a gift card that puts some cash into our business doors, as well as some other promotional opportunities where it will drive that return business as people do start opening up again. So I do encourage our merchants to take advantage of things like that to build back their business. So I'm, happy to, let's see what else we have. I see something else maybe in the chat room. Yes. Okay. So there's the link to hound.com and for the Tucson Pima sign up. So take a look at that. Thanks, Kevin, for putting that there. And then don't forget, we're going to be here next week at 3 o'clock. And, I'm excited about next week because we're going to continue to open up a conversation. We have our weekly webinars at 3 o'clock every Monday. And so don't forget to register when you see your email invite in your inbox, because we're going to keep you connected. And next week we feature Jan Lesher and the Pima County Back to Business team with some information on reopening updates and some other resources. We'll also feature Ashley LaRussa, who will share how we can support our Black-owned businesses in Tucson. She has been doing a lot of work compiling lists of our Black-owned businesses. We want to ask her about strategies and opportunities to support a community that needs us right now and every day going forward. So that, I think, will be an especially important topic. And Jasmine and Adam, I just want to thank you for being here today and bringing some of these resources to us locally, because I think a lot of times we think about, your large industry associations and that it's not really for us. But I think you're changing your tone on that, and you're making yourselves available, and that's really great. And so I do hope that some of our businesses take advantage and even become representatives on your council so they can represent Tucson in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would be
great.
So, so put your email there in the chat room if you haven't already, so that someone who would like to be a voice of small business and represent Tucson and the Western region, then do that, because the time is now, and we certainly want the small business voice to be heard. So don't forget, you can also call our City of Tucson Economic Initiative Small Business Hotline, 520-837-4100, and check connecttucson.com for other resources, as well as make sure you're signed up on our newsletter so you won't miss all of our great announcements. So with that, let's see, I'll make sure that there's no final comments. They're appreciated, the data from the survey. And then again, remember, you'll have that webinar posted tomorrow. And there is Jasmine's email there. So please reach out to her if you have questions, or go to icsc.org, or is it .com? icsc.com to
Yes.
find out about signing up. And the membership link was also posted there. So thank you both for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.